I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. It's that time of year again. Bishop DiMarzio celebrates the Chrism Mass. We'll take you there.
During this Mass, we bless the oils that are used during the year in the administration of the sacraments. Chrism, the oil of the sick, and the oil of catechumens.
Plus, the BP oil spill 1 year later. We'll find out how the recovery is going along the Gulf Coast. And bridging the divide between two faiths.
This just gives rise to faith and hope, and that's what we're all about in the context of spring and the rebirth and renewal. Can't beat it.
Good evening, and thanks so much for joining us. Since its earliest days, the Church has set aside a solemn day of liturgy and ritual to bless the holy oils, or the chrism, that will be used for the remainder of the Church's calendar year following Easter. The oils blessed at the Chrism Mass will be used at many important ceremonies like ordinations, baptisms, confirmations, and the blessing of churches, just to name a few. Last night at St. James Cathedral in downtown Brooklyn, the ritual came to life once again, with the faithful and the ordained gathered to witness the blessing of the oils. Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio celebrated the Mass, which also offered priests and deacons of the diocese a chance to renew their vows.
Bless this oil and give wisdom and strength to all who are anointed with it in preparation for baptism. Bring them to a deeper understanding of the gospel. Help them to accept the challenge of Christian living and lead them to the joy of new birth and the family of your church. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Today we're celebrating the Mass of Chrism. During this Mass, we bless the oils that are used during the year in the administration of the sacraments. Chrism, the oil of the sick, and the oil of catechumens. The chrism will be used in baptism, confirmation, and ordination to anoint God's people to be more like Christ himself, to be a priestly people. The oil of the sick will restore those to health who are sick in mind and body for the service of the church and their return to the Eucharist. The oil of catechumens will prepare those to be baptized by giving them the strength to continue the process of conversion. Yes, these oils tonight that we will bless are the means and the signs by which God will sanctify his people. Christ, on the week before his passion, was anointed in Bethany by Mary. He was anointed, and they tried to stop it because it was a waste of oil, they said, especially Judas, who wanted to sell the oil. It was a sign that he was anointed as the one who was to be the Messiah. It is the tradition we follow that oil is a sign that we call upon God's presence. Are you resolved to imitate Jesus Christ, the head and the shepherd of the church, by teaching the Christian faith without thinking of your own profit, solely for the well-being of the people you were sent to serve? The priests come also to renew their vows of priestly commitment. That's part of the ritual on this night. The deacons also renew their commitment to the promises they made in the day of ordination. Obviously, every day a priest must renew their commitment, but once a year, together with the whole presbyterate, as many as who can come, we renew that solemn promises that they made, and together they uphold one another and encourage one another to keep those promises of obedience and respect to their bishop and of service to their people.
Well, this day we articulate the renewal of our vows, but every day we're called to serve is a renewal of what we promise to God and to the church.
Are they renewed every day? Personally, I think they're lived every day. So in each day of living them, it is a matter of renewing it each morning as you begin your new day.
We do this with the bishop tonight with tremendous joy because we're all there with him. And you see the fraternity of the priesthood and the universality of God's call. You see so many priests from so many countries serving here in Brooklyn, uniting themselves with the bishop today. And it was a very beautiful and moving moment.
Well, stay tuned. There's much more currents ahead. Arizona Governor Jan Brewer vetoed the birther bill, but did she also deal a blow to religious rights? We'll have that story for you and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up later, ahead of Easter, we'll hear about the state of Catholic-Jewish relations from Archbishop Timothy Dolan. But first, let's have a look at the day's headlines. Well, Jerusalem's Christian leaders are taking the opportunity during Holy Week to pray for Christians suffering across the Middle East. In a joint Easter message, Jerusalem's Catholic, Orthodox, and Protestant leaders say the joy of Easter has become more solemn as they witness violence in so many parts of the embattled region. Another region entangled in violence is Nigeria, where there is continued fighting in the aftermath of the country's presidential elections. The organization Christian Solidarity Worldwide says churches were burned down and Christian homes and businesses were looted following the victory of a Christian presidential candidate over two Muslim candidates. In all, at least 50 people are reported to have died in the violence. It is a day of prayer and fasting in Pakistan. A human rights group there organizing a day of prayer for Christians to remember Asia Bibi. She's the woman sentenced to die after being found guilty of violating Pakistan's strict blasphemy laws. Believers also offered prayers for other victims of the law. Earlier this year, 2 government ministers who favored overturning it were assassinated in separate incidents. A former British soldier will spend 70 days behind bars after being convicted of burning a Quran in public. The man burned the Islamic holy book in front of a crowd in the northern English town of Carlisle. His lawyer said the burning was directed toward radical Islam, but a judge called the incident theatrical bigotry. Meantime, a prosecutor in Michigan has filed a petition to stop controversial Florida pastor Terry Jones from holding a rally outside a mosque in Dearborn. Jones has planned a rally this Friday outside the country's largest mosque, the Islamic Center of America in Dearborn, Michigan. Jones first gained notoriety last year when he threatened to burn the Quran on September 11th, but he eventually backed down. But last month, he supposedly put the Quran on trial, and then he did burn it. That incident led to deadly violence in Afghanistan, where more than 20 people were killed. Well, meanwhile, the Catholic president of the Philippines says he's willing to risk excommunication rather than scrap legislation that promotes contraception. Aquino Benigno reportedly made the statement in an address to graduating seniors at the University of the Philippines. The legislation, known as the Responsible Parenthood Bill, promotes contraception. That's something the Catholic Church opposes. A representative for the Filipino Bishops' Conference has denied the speculation that the president would be excommunicated for his support of the bill. Well, abortion rights advocates in Pennsylvania are speaking out against legislation that would place new restrictions on abortion clinics in that state. The website Life News reports that the bill would require Pennsylvania abortion clinics to meet the same standards as ambulatory surgery centers. This comes just months after Philadelphia abortion Dr. Kermit Gosnell was charged in the deaths of 7 babies at his clinic. He is accused of delivering babies and then severing their spines with scissors. Prosecutors say a search of his office turned up bags containing aborted fetuses along with bottles containing severed feet. Well, in Arizona, it is papers, please, but no new money for private schools. Governor Jan Brewer, best known for signing a controversial immigration bill that Catholic bishops called draconian, vetoed some bills recently that were supported by her fellow Republicans. Last week, Brewer said no to a bill that would have provided more tax dollars to private and religious schools. Well, this week, she bucked her party again, vetoing the so-called birther bill, which would have required presidential candidates to provide baptismal or circumcision certificates to prove that they were born in the U.S. Well, the Vatican newspaper, meantime, has gone digital. L'Osservatore Romano, or the Roman Observer, has unveiled a new online edition. The website will have the latest news from the paper in both English and in Italian. The paper says it is a special gift for the 6th anniversary of Pope Benedict's election. And if you're headed to church on Good Friday, you may want to put something extra in your collection envelopes. Churches will be taking the Pontifical Good Friday collection for the Holy Land. The money will go for the support of Holy Land places and for the church's work in Israel, the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and in East Jerusalem. Well, stay tuned. There's much more Currents ahead. When we return on the 1-year anniversary of the Gulf oil spill, we'll take a look at how the region is coping. Welcome back. Well, it has been a year since the worst oil spill in U.S. history. More than 200 million gallons of oil spewed into the Gulf of Mexico after the Deepwater Horizon rig exploded on April 20th, 2010, More than 1/3 of Gulf waters were closed to fishing. Most of it's now been reopened, but life is far from back to normal. Jim Spellman has a look at how the disaster is still affecting the Gulf 1 year later.
Last year's explosion on BP's Deepwater Horizon oil rig changed a way of life along the Gulf.
We've lost crabs. I'm a crab fisherman. I got a commercial license. I can't even catch crabs. There's none out here. Where they went, we don't know.
The explosion claimed the lives of 11 men. Oil gushed into the Gulf of Mexico for nearly 3 months, covering beaches and wildlife and bringing tourism to a halt. A year later, the recovery is a mixed bag. The beaches look clean, but in some of the marshes, oil remains.
It's wiped out the birds that used to be here. It's wiped out the fish.
The seafood industry is still struggling. It looks like you got plenty of ice, but not enough shrimp.
That's the problem.
In a normal year, Dean Blanchard says he would have 100 boats a day lining up to sell him shrimp. But now he's lucky to have 3 or 4.
They took away, everything I work for and everything I love to do. It's a culture down here. It's a heritage.
Out of $20 billion set aside by BP to compensate victims, over $4 billion has been paid out.
So I think in terms of speed, in terms of generosity, we're doing it right.
But to many still waiting for their checks, it sounds all wrong.
Well, I think they were fibbing. I just don't believe anything they tell us anymore.
One thing's for sure, this is a year that no one here wants to repeat.
Well, that is Jim Spellman reporting in Grand Isle, Louisiana. Joining me now to talk more about the spill and how residents are coping 1 year later is Tom Costanza. He's with Catholic Charities in New Orleans. Tom, thanks so much for taking some time out for us. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you, too. Thank you.
Well, so how are people handling things in New Orleans and of course, around the Gulf region here 1 year on? I mean, we just saw in that report from CNN, the seafood industry, fishing industry still struggling very much so. Tourism also still struggling, I imagine, and there's still oil in the marshes. How are people handling all of this on a day-to-day basis?
Well, this is a difficult time. This is we're concerned about the health impacts of the oil in the communities. Certainly, the most important immediate concern right now is a lot of the fishing sector claims have not been paid, and families are in distress right now. We just got some mental health reports of just people at their financial crisis position right now, and it's a struggle for us, and it's the reality. But the people are resilient and very spiritual people. The Archbishop was with them in Pointe-LaHache, just praying with them and supporting them on their journey, and knowing that the Catholic Church is with them. And I think we need to continue to be present ministerially to people, and also help them with direct services and help them change the system that's been set up. It's not anybody personally bad in this system. It's just a bad system that has been set up by Mr. Feinberg, and the system he set up is not working for the fishing community.
Yeah, the payouts, of course, a lot of the claims and the payouts have been very, very slow in coming and trying to relieve what a lot of people have been going through down there. How is Catholic Charities sort of stepping in to kind of fill some gaps, kind of help people out?
Yeah, well, we're providing very important case managers or the human presence of Christ, just sort of being present with people. Then we help as much as we can with direct dollars. But we're already going into our reserves by $350,000. We've raised about $2.8 million, but we've spent nearly $3 million. So we continually go into our reserves to pay for this because there's just simply no federal help. BP will no longer give us any more funds. They tell us to keep waiting to do their own assessments, but we're still not giving up. We have some other options with some other funding sources. But Catholic Charities mainly is providing case management, direct assistance with rent, utilities, making referrals, helping them with job, looking at maybe having to be looking at other career paths. We have a significant mental health outreach, and that BP, we have to say they did support us with the mental health, and we have to be thankful for that, and we are. But the needs are much greater. We have medical needs, social service needs, legal needs. This is impacting the people. But Catholic Charities is providing those type of basic services, case management, social services right now, and some mental health services.
Sure. Have you seen, of course, I know a lot of, when it was in the headlines every day, I mean, it was for, about 5 months, the top story on every newscast. Since that has sort of faded, since all the attention has kind of gone away, and since a lot of other things have happened since, do you think that the Gulf Coast has kind of have been forgotten? I mean, have you seen still outside help coming from places other than the Gulf Coast since the headlines have started to die down?
Well, I think it's normal, with all the other stuff happening in the world, and these are sort of isolated coastal communities, and I know BP has spent like $93 million on their advertising campaign to say everything is right, but it isn't. And, I think right now, it's not right in these communities right now, but I got to keep back to the resiliency of the people. They just were recovering from Katrina, and now this hits them. And actually, these are some of the same communities that Katrina hit. So you have a very deep rural, a lot of them are Catholic, deeply rooted in family, deeply rooted in the church, and I think that's really the thing that's going to keep them through. They're resilient. But I think for the most part, everybody else has forgotten about this. This is old news, and hopefully this 1 year and programs like this kind of ask people to take another look at what's happened and maybe support us. I know we're going to try to do another round of support to tell about what we have done, but what we still need to do to complete the recovery.
Well, after everything that's happened there, the resilience of the people is absolutely amazing. Tom Costanza with Catholic Charities in the Archdiocese of New Orleans. Thanks so much for taking some time out for us. We really appreciate it, and you'll, of course, remain in our thoughts and our prayers.
Prayers will be very, 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 very much appreciated. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Tom. Well, there's more Currents coming up. Coming up, Christianity and Judaism. Archbishop Timothy Dolan looks at their similarities, differences, and how believers can come together.
The two families of faith are anticipating our High Holy Days together. It gives an added note of hope and seriousness to it.
Well, finally tonight, when Pope Benedict moved Pope Pius XII closer to sainthood, various Jewish groups were outraged by the decision, denouncing Pius for his perceived silence on the plight of the Jews during the Holocaust. But fast forward now to 2011, and Pope Benedict was recently on the receiving end of much praise from Jewish leaders for the announcement in his latest volume of Jesus of Nazareth that the Jews were not responsible for the death of Christ. Well, with this a holy week for both faiths, Jewish people observing the Passover and Catholics preparing to celebrate Easter, Archbishop Timothy Dolan held a recent talk at the Jewish Theological Seminary that looked at bridging the faith divide.
We're here this evening for me to address your community, both in my role as Archbishop of New York and as a religious colleague, furthering between us the ongoing chapters of genuine dialogue built on the admission of past wrongs and the resolve to build a friendship that would prevent these from happening again. We've begun to reevaluate our dialogue's purpose and style, setting aside what I have come to call the dialogue of grievances and turning instead to a dialogue of mutuality. I would point to positive and fruitful conversation about last year's Ober Ammergau Passion Play as a good example. Namely, for the first time in 4 decades, that previously terribly divisive and controversial play this year went on with relatively not a hitch.
The Ober Ammergau Passion Play is an example of everything that was wrong in Catholic-Jewish relations, everything that is better in Catholic-Jewish relations, and everything that yet needs to be done in Catholic-Jewish relations. It's an example, an imperfect example, of how Catholics and Jews can talk about the most difficult issues and make progress in a very unusual context. In Bavaria, in the heart of former Nazism, where Hitler appeared twice at the Oberammergau Passion Play and exemplified it as the best source for learning about the Jews and what we need to do with them in this generation. He obviously was rebuffed and negated ultimately, and that process has taken place in Oberammergau. It's not yet done, it's not perfect, but it's a testament to decades of Catholic-Jewish relations.
Today, I might suggest that we take a further step, that we engage each other actively, fully respectful of our identities and differences, yet coming together in whatever ways would help us build up this sense of mutuality.
Dialogue is not just a nice thing that Jews and Catholics should do, but dialogue is a duty for Jews and Catholics to perform.
When the Pope meets with the chief rabbi of Rome within the Vatican walls as if they are somehow equals at that moment, those are very big statements of mutuality. Because after all, there are 1 billion Catholics in the world, and there are only 13 million Jews in the world.
And when you have Easter and Passover coming together like this, I think it's great. The Good Friday prayer, which we will be doing in 3 days, is excellent. It says, "Let us pray for the Jewish people, the first to hear the word of God." So just as the Jews gather for the Seder meal and they tell the story of the people, well, on Holy Saturday night and on all of the stories that we're now doing, aren't we now telling our founding events as to who we are? These are our stories. Interestingly enough, both groups are story people. Both groups have a narrative.
As Passover and Easter approach, I offer you my prayers. May every race and nation be freed to enjoy his everlasting peace, and may his blessings be upon you and your families.
Well, it's been a very difficult dialogue over the years, but of course we will pray for much improvement, as has already been seen, as you just saw there. Well, that is it for this edition of Currents. In fact, this is it for Currents for this whole week. Be sure to tune in to NET for its wall-to-wall Easter programming. That's all coming up. For, of course, special programming the remainder of Holy Week, and then a lot of special programming over the weekend as well. You don't want to miss that. But until next time, if you need to get in touch with us, or if you need to get your currents fixed for the week, feel free to head on over to our website and do just that. CurrentsNY.net is our website. You can watch full broadcasts and individual reports as well. Now, we're also on Facebook and on Twitter, so feel free to join us there too. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for watching. Have a wonderful Holy Week and happy Easter.